Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us.
I have
Hopefully,
a donut.
hopefully you're better than us. We're crooning our necks because apparently Jeffrey used the sound equipment over the weekend.
I don't know
feel
what
like
you're
a
talking
giraffe.
about.
And feel like a giraffe. I'm having to I don't know. I agree.
What
I
does
did,
I
have
guess
good
I thought you
posture.
guys were taller than you
I did
are.
the last
I tried to
podcast.
reset it up.
He thinks we have good posture.
oh man, I
I
did
don't have good posture.
It's probably
Jeffrey.
best
I'm
for my
trying.
back.
I was gonna say I'm trying to make us have good posture.
Right, that's exactly what it is. It's good. I did the last podcast and I just stretched my neck like a giraffe the whole time. And Scott called it out. I mean, seconds before we went live today. So there, you get to get in on our internal conversation. My name is Neil with SFJ4x4.com, and I'm joined in the Grandma's Couch studio by two fine gentlemen.
One with a donut.
One soon to have a donut. Thank you, John, for the Dunkin' Donut
Not
donuts.
sponsored,
Not sponsored.
but we okay with it.
But we'll okay, food in our belly during the
Just got to bring coffee for Neil and Jeff.
right. And then Jeffrey, how are you doing over there? You okay?
I don't know. We'll see.
You can't see the comments. What,
I-
Jeff, what did you do?
It's not loading the comments. I've got
I see
kind
comments.
of here, but not where we normally have them. So
It
so
is
far this
weird.
morning, Amy is saying good morning, guys,
Good morning.
and Bill is saying happy Monday, men.
Yeah. Good morning. Good morning, Jeff. There is a nice gift to your right. I would like you to hand me off screen, on screen there.
Right this
please.
second. Are you ready for
I'm
it?
ready for it right now.
Are you
even
sure?
though you didn't introduce yourselves.
Well, I was gonna
Oh.
say, do you want to enter?
I did, but I'm right now. I was talking about donuts. Give me this already, Jeffrey.
We
do
need a
this.
drum roll first. Come on.
Oh my goodness.
I glanced at them this morning. They're pretty cool.
All right. Do you want to? You're going to tell people who you are?
I'm the maddest scientist.
My
Little
God, if
better
this
now
is
that I
your
have
first
donut.
time ever listening to this podcast, I sort of apologize. I mean,
Sort of.
I sort of because it's really not all that much different
What
than what you'll
happens
usually
when
be
you hand
expecting.
a guy a donut when he's trying to get ready?
Well, and
Well-
then our decorated producer is over
Joe's
here
saying good morning too.
just
What's wrong with it,
cobbing
Jeffrey?
stuff up.
Just run with it.
Oh,
We can
Jeff.
see him. Don't keep clicking. You're
So
just to make it
Jeff
Yeah. Well,
Giramonte, the Italian stallion, the producer who's
Hi.
not producing anything right now.
I am doing a
Yes,
great
yes.
job of producing. We have audio. We have video. We can see comments, just not the way I'd like to see them.
The mics are attached to the ceiling right now. This was stellar. This is a good start, folks. Very professional with Jeeps.
Yeah. Great.
So a big shout out to Dave from Geauga County Jeepers, right? So if you are unfamiliar, Dave kind of is representing a small group of individuals who get together, plan some events. This is actually technically, I think he said, kind of their third event at or before COVID. And so I'm going to give them a quick shout out because if you're in the northeastern Ohio, northwestern Pennsylvania area, you will have seen the Andover Jeep Invasion being tagged. And the Dave from Geauga County Jeepers is hosting this event. And they are all proceeds will be donated to Freedom Crawlers, so a local and growing club who are largely about supporting
good causes.
good causes, and their phrase is Jeepin' with a mission. So Dave was so moved and motivated by that any proceeds raised during the Andover Jeep Invasion will be going to them. And so I'm going to read off. Dave stopped in the other day, and he says, Causeway Cruise ending at the Linesville Spillway starts at 1 p.m., 50-50 raffle, Jeep scavenger hunt, silent auction, duck race, kayak race, actual kayaks, and safety equipment will be provided
That's
because
awesome.
this will be next to the shoreline. And lots of great prizes / Jeep parts. I know he was in. They actually, he and his wife, as I understand it, actually went ahead and purchased several of the what they would call big ticket items.
Awesome.
And so sponsorships from ourselves and other businesses will help offset some of that cost and then raise continued funds for, again, heading towards Freedom Crawlers for their pursuits. So, and I do know that kind of the expectation for this is a little dissimilar from your big Jeep shows, that this is meant to be, kind of a meet and greet atmosphere with activities.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it
So-
sounds really fun.
And then a shout out to them because of last week on the podcast, we had mentioned
Bricks and sticks.
bricks and sticks and thinking that was a fun or funny
That's what
shirt
That's what I
option
bring to the table.
that Dave and his wife literally made a Jeep and manual transmission shift knob kind of display and created these bricks and sticks shirts.
That's awesome.
Those are
For
fun.
us. So made 3 shirts and delivered them and just said how much they enjoyed the program and we're obviously inspired by the
That's awesome.
jubilation. So there's our event. I will do a quick plug. It is August 18th from 9:30 to 1 p.m. at the Pymatuning State Park on the Ohio side, the Ohio Main Beach.
Put it in your calendar now.
Yep, and I love that. I love that particular park. I love Pymatuning.
Yep.
Um,
If you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth a trip.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
See
and
that.
this, like I said, it's a Sunday. It's a Sunday morning. Let your preacher know you're not going to make it to church. Do it virtually. Whatever you got to do. Head down, hang out with some other Jeepers. So had that off to the side there. We've got donuts. Jeffrey, would you like a donut?
I'm good for the moment, but I am going to say good morning to Don and Roy.
Good morning. Good morning. So we are going to be continuing our conversation about automatic transmissions today. We had started that in the last podcast. So if you are one of the individuals, lucky 3 who are listening to us in your ear holes, first of all, we appreciate you. Without you, there would be no program. So all 3 of you, we really value you. But ultimately, you too can join us live on Facebook at 10:19 a.m. most Mondays. So if you are listening to us while flying, driving truck, you've downloaded it and you're working in the yard right now, whatever it might be, thank you. But you can jump on, you can hang out live with us, comment in the comments the comments that we can't load right now apparently.
Well, I mean, I'm still able to access them, so just not the way that we like to.
I blame
Sure.
So Roy's saying that shirt needs to be an SFJ shirt.
Well, and it totally could be. And it totally could be. Bricks and sticks. Well, like I said, we're going to get Davey on that, and Dave was like, "I'm here for it, and I'm bringing you guys, prototypes,
Yes.
examples, right?
That's
For
awesome.
sure." So, we're going to be talking tech, but per the usual, like to do a little bit of a update with you folks.
Yeah.
So what's going on in our world as extension? We should have a YouTube video dropping this week for Life in Low Range, so you're going to want to check that out on Friday.
Nice.
And otherwise, a live. Last week I did the live in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
So-
that was fun.
Yeah.
I apologize for not getting to that live, but
Jeffrey
I'm
was
so
a
glad.
little busy. I'm
so glad that you
your-
did it.
I'm glad your event's over, so Jeffrey can get back to business.
Yeah, yeah, that was a long.
How was that event? How was the lead up? Tell us about it a little bit.
So
I'm gonna eat a donut. I'm really struggling because I had a sprinkle earlier.
yeah.
I want a sprinkle again,
So have another sprinkle.
but then I really want like a cream donut. You know?
So have it too.
No, that's too
Yeah.
many donuts.
You just turned 40. You'll
teeth
be all
will-
right.
Yeah.
My teeth will
You do
hurt.
whatever you want. It's 2024 and you're 40. Do what you want.
That's right.
So the event though was a huge success. Nothing but positive feedback all weekend.
Mhm.
We had tons of cash that we handed out to amazing artists. There was some panic moments because the night before the event, one of our judges had something come up and was not able to attend.
Oh, dear.
So we had to scramble, and we were able to secure another judge. Then the morning of,
Wait a second. I think it was your mom, honestly, who was doing shirt design and stuff, right?
yes,
The judging panel. All right, right now, you know what, viewers at home and and people listening, all 3 of you in your ear holes, I'm sorry, you are loaded up with with donut glaze. Scott was covered in donut glaze.
how was your donut, Scott?
That was good.
Yummy.
Yeah,
It was
we
like
could
Cookie
tell.
Monster. Cookie. Scott, donut. I look over at him. He's covered in donut glaze on
Man.
his black hood. I'm
He
not
devoured that.
I'm
that
just gonna say.
no, he devoured that donut like I did the brownie a couple weeks ago.
That's right. We looked over you. You were just rubbing it on your face at that point. I mean, I am far from perfect. I get that 100%. If I'm eating something, I'm spilling on me. When I looked over there and Scott took a bath in donut glaze, I wasn't ready.
Didn't have my wife here to keep it presentable. It is.
So I was the judges at the event, which is Heberly's Heartstrings open mic night competition, had the cutest shirts, and they said, "I'm totally judging you."
Yeah.
That was funny.
And it had the musical staff around it.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
Yes, it was excellent. It was really fun. Okay, back to business.
So just on that note, the sign for the judges on the backside said all the bios, and it said, "Look who's judging you," and it had the bios for the judges. So
That's awesome.
we played off of the shirt with that.
Yeah, that's cute.
But it was a really good time. A lot of people showed up. Voodoo is not a small venue by any means, and we had it pretty well filled up. I don't think there was a seat left in the house, and there was a lot of people standing as well.
That's awesome.
I honestly don't have a count off the top of my head of how many people were there, but I do know that it was a lot. We were hoping for more. Ended up being kind of cooler and windy, so we did not get the attendance we wanted, but it was still a great turnout. The winner of the event actually won it with a song that he wrote called Ammonia and Bleach. And the creativity in the lyrics was amazing.
Oh boy.
We were 5 songs in, and I turned to my judges panel and I said, I am so grateful I am not judging, because we're only 5 songs in and I haven't heard a bad one yet. It was
awesome.
amazing talent. Everybody there showed up with passion. They were ready to go. They wanted that prize, and it was just a great time. Many of the artists, the most common feedback that I heard that everybody loved about it was how friendly the event was, and that they were able to make a lot of new connections with other artists and with other venues, because some of the other venue owners came out to watch, and some of the artists were invited to book gigs. Some of them were given other connections to go other places and do other things. So it was just a great night. Our second place winner, and this is the most important thing to note, I think, 17 years old, won second place, won $750. That kid is going places.
That's
awesome.
How cool is that? And it's as a personal observation, because there was 30 competitors. Right?
There was, yep.
30 competitors. I thought was interesting. All under one roof, all within this one venue. I thought it was kind of fun as a fly on the wall at the particular event, was just to see all these people reconnecting, right? Coming in under kind of this shared experience, and it was kind of funny to watch these grouping of people kind of like, oh, I haven't seen you in so long, and what are you up to? And it was so neat to hear your piece, because I haven't got to see you in person recently. And I've got to imagine I'm not a local independent artist of any capacity, but I've got to imagine, like, if you are and you're going out to a bar, restaurant, local venue, and you're playing a set for the night, while your friends are playing or your acquaintances are playing at 2 or 3 other venues at the same
Right.
time,
Yep.
all over the tri-state area, probably. And so for all of them to be under one roof at one time, it's got to be almost a little bit of like a little Super Bowl kind of
Unique.
experience, unique venue. you
Yeah.
know?
And that's exactly what it was. And many of them had gigs booked the remainder of the weekend. Some of them at shared venues, but didn't even know that they were playing alongside each other at those venues until that night. They were talking like, oh, you're playing Dreadfest? We're going to be there.
Sure.
When are you playing? Oh, we're playing right after you.
Right.
So a lot of that kind of stuff going on. So that was really fun to see. Overall, it was a great event. And to my understanding, we've been told we will be back next year.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't asked. It was literally the city showed up to close the street down. And in talks of that, the city's like, hey, when you guys do this next year, it'd be really good if you did it on a Saturday. It's easier for us to close the street. And the manager of Voodoo looks at me, and the city manager goes, well, we'll see what we can do. Jeff, do you think we could do this on a Saturday next year? I'm like, Yep, we can do this on a Saturday next year.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I don't know the date yet or anything, but we will be back there doing it
Well,
again.
congratulations on pulling that off. So excellent. Scott, what do you got going on? How was your weekend?
Weekend was pretty good. Little small 36 update. I did had a home or a SFJ project in where the car normally is, so I was just looking for little things to do, and one of those was the new to me old original grill needed a couple of repairs, so I went ahead and took that off the car and brought it over to the workbench, kind of fixed some spots where some bars had broken loose, kind of straightened out some dents. And I had this weird problem where the grill was too high before that. It's multitude of different attaching points. And after repairing what I felt was like little to no big deals of stuff, it literally went right on the car and bolted right up perfectly. So
Wow.
I was not expected, very tickled.
It looks great in the picture updates.
I'm really happy with that, but it did make me, the car told me as I was putting the grill back on there
Sure.
that in no uncertain terms that I needed to change one more part. Before I bought the car, someone had welded the fender on a 36 Ford is normally 2 pieces. So you'll have in total 4 pieces, not including the grill. And they had welded those together to make one giant fender. And that is not the way the car is designed to be put together. You're supposed to put the middle fender onto the grill and then put that on the car and then bolt the fender onto the car. And it is very challenging to put it on incorrectly. And I was putting the grill in there, and like I said, there's 2 on the bottom, there's 2 on the side. The emblem goes on, and that's another attaching point. So you have a lot of touch points. And I said, I can't do this all as a big assembly, because basically how the car would be right now, I have to put the fenders, which are huge, on the grill and then put everything on the car at once.
Huh.
And everything has a little bit of play, and you can't have that. So I went ahead and messaged a buddy out of New England that does metal work, and he has a 36 problem and lots of spare parts. I said, hey, you have some fender extensions? And he said, yes. So I went ahead and got those coming. And I will have a little bit of repair to do on those, and then I will be able to do some surgery on the fender. I'm going to have to cut the old piece off, but now that I have new middle pieces, I can sacrifice those.
That car tells you a lot of things.
It's pretty needy.
I'd say the least.
So, and then the other thing is we had a celebration of life for my friend that passed away, so dusted off the Rambler, went to that. Everybody was very happy. His widow was, the first thing out of her mouth was, "Is it here? Did you bring the Rambler?" And I said, of course I did. I wouldn't miss that. That's he actually is who helped me get that car, so that was very important. And it was kind of fun at the end to kind of look back at, because at the beginning I was very somber for me. I was actually having a hard time keeping it together, and they said, well, you need to talk to Richie, his grandson. So the place we were at had multiple different rooms. It was kind of nice to be able to kind of go off by yourself. And they're from Florida, so they had the fireplace on full blast.
Oh, dear.
And had jackets on next to the fireplace. They were freezing to death. And I was able to sit kind of in there, and he's a fabricator, works with metal. He does mud trucks down in Florida.
Right.
So we have the 4-wheel drive. His wife is a gearhead just as much as he is. So her and my wife were very similar. She drives a OBS Chevy on 35s and told about that with an LS swap. So it was just really,
how fun.
it was cool to be able to talk car and to have some good stories of my friend. And they had stories of him as a grandfather, and everyone had a loving, good time. And they actually had to kick us out after. We were there the whole entire time. So
that's a good problem to have.
So
right?
it was really good. It was very much, you couldn't ask for any better way of honoring someone. So,
excellent. And I have just a fun story, because as many of our listeners and customers know, that you are you've developed this metal shop, and we've been utilizing it, professionally here and kind of supporting you in that process. And so we did have a customer vehicle from Kentucky that was at your shop. We were trying to power through last week, and you needed a little bit of assistance with, hard top roll bar or something or other. So I show up at Scott's house, check on things, move, help whatever. And the Rambler was, in process of getting dusted off per se. And I said, so, and any of our listeners who are acquainted with us know that Scott has a car collecting problem, because they all have many of them have nostalgic value, right? Much as somebody might have an old photograph or a piece of clothing or a baseball mitt or something, that the cars themselves have nostalgic value for you.
Yep.
And your wife joins you in that same belief.
Thank God.
And yeah, right. And so the Rambler was out, and of course we know, she has her father's truck, and you have your family's truck, and there's all these other vehicles that have this value to it. And I said, so the Rambler's not going anywhere, and Scott and I are just kind of busily working away, and I made this kind of statement or proclamation, and Scott didn't miss a beat. He didn't hiccup. He didn't do whatever. Because at couple points in time, Scott had talked about getting rid of the Rambler, divesting it to, it's a Rambler, so it's not like it's $1 million, but,
No.
a couple $1,000s towards the 36 project. And does this make sense? And doesn't it make sense? And so on and so forth. And he had talked about getting rid of it a couple different times over the years. So I say, we're just kind of working, and I was kind of ready to have a little bit of a conversation about it. And so I say, well, I guess the Rambler's not going away anytime soon, because of course I know your association with the car and with Walt. Scott doesn't miss a beat. He doesn't look up from what he's doing. He doesn't stop. He doesn't nothing. He goes, yep, that's the kids' problem, and he keeps on or that's my kids' problem, and he just, that's my kids' problem now, or something to that effect, and just keeps on moving with what he was doing. I thought, yep, that is the reality of the situation.
And as of right now, as a 10 and a 7-year-old, they literally were ready to duke it out over
who gets it?
Who gets the Rambler at the moment. So we'll see where that changes as they age. But right now, they have a lot of love for that car.
I'm telling you, Evelyn is more cut from the Simpson mantra. I got to be honest. She's going to be in some bougie sports car, luxury piece later on.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I was going to say, she's the one that will win in the fight.
Well,
she'll get the car. But
she will. But I don't know if she'll want it, That might be Aiden's speed, I think.
We'll see.
We'll see, right? Excellent.
And
I'm just glad that you two are going to be back in-house because realistically...
my favorite thing about the event is when Davey showed up and goes, Neil has been cursing that you're not there all week.
Oh, yeah. Nope. This is for the birds, man. SFJ 4x4 cannot operate on two people anymore. Now, just understand, folks. So at one point in time,
Morning,
when I started
Rob.
this, okay, Rob. I started this out of the backyard of my parents' place. It was just one dude toiling away. That was pretty lean and mean. With some, Scott's helping part time, my cousin helping part time, whatever. And then Greg comes on full time, and he and I toiled away, built some cool Jeeps. At this point in time, we are way past that.
Yeah,
we need our full team, and that was one of those moments where
Joe says, "Poor Neil."
Oh, I was a mess. My head. So it was my birthday last week, which, thank you all who reached out to me for that, and that was wonderful.
Big 4-0.
Yeah, whatever, right? It was a big deal. I'm going on 25,
listen,
so I'm good.
I'm going to interrupt on that note because we know that that's also coming really quick for Scott. And
Scott feels every bit of that.
Davey acquired this picture, and I'm going to try to push it towards the camera here so we can show.
Nobody can see it.
It's all washed out. Darn.
It's all washed out. You can't see it.
Davey, I need you to come put this in front of the camera.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Davey's going to come hold it up right in front of the camera so we get it.
Oh, my goodness.
I felt that working on that Jeep all week.
I know. That's why it's.
Why are you
gonna? He's zooming it in.
Oh, he's zooming in. It's still washed out. Scott in a emergency services
Totally
there.
a Davey photo.
Terrible.
Look at
Davey
Davey's good
Photoshop.
camera work to get zoomed right in
Right?
on that.
That was
and
excellent.
adjust the color. So go ahead and describe that for our listeners.
Wow, for our listeners, we have Scott, the mad scientist. I think you're going to probably turn to our social for this. You can we'll put this on social. There's no reason
At
we
least I
can't.
have my hat on.
This is like almost cartoony Photoshop. It's really not bad, but it's also not good. And it's basically Scott getting lifted out of a hospital bed in a
Or Hoyer.
And a Hoyer.
Hoyer sling, body sling there. Oh my gosh. You felt that. You're feeling that, old man,
Oh
huh?
my goodness.
Yeah, a lot of people reached out to me. Thank you. I appreciate that. My head spun at the end of the week. It was just such a long, hard week when we had so many things going on. I can only imagine we're going to be paying that price for the first couple days of this week. And then, like, Jeeps just didn't want to leave the property.
I'm telling you, I walked in this morning and I saw all the inventory sitting across the counter, on the floor next to the counter, a stack of papers on my desk. I'm like,
Jeeps,
oh,
many Jeeps
boy,
that should have left.
we
that
have-
didn't.
there's so much going on to try to get caught up on.
I just can't even. I don't want to. We'll talk about it later. But needless to say, if you're one of the people who's trying to work with us right now, thank you for your patience. I'll say that. And we're doing our best to get everybody appropriately dressed in our unique process.
And good morning to Michael. And Rob says, good job, Davey.
Yes. Yeah, he did great camera work there. So needless to say, with that, we have I just was on the Huss all weekend. I did have a very nice celebration on Saturday. The wife put on, it was kind of a Cheers, the TV show, the sitcom inspired birthday celebration, just because while I don't prioritize a lot of other kind of entertainment, kind of late at night, the one thing I can do to kind of unwind, I've started rewatching the Cheers sitcom. And so
Great show.
yeah, just nice, good, decent entertainment, just easy brain candy. So as far as that, and then lots of work on the new house and property. So very cool stuff.
And Daddy Jeep saying, I welded out a roll cage for 3 hours Friday night myself, and I have 10 years on you guys, so I feel that picture as well.
Yes.
I
You have to
believe
put
it.
yourself in positions you didn't expect to. When you
I
gotta do
saw the
that.
roll cage that Rob was working on.
It came out nice.
It came out beautiful, and it was very, very challenging work there. So excellent.
And looks like Fred's in here saying good morning as
Good
well.
morning, Fred. So we are supposed to be talking tech today, finishing up that conversation that we had started in the last podcast. So if you're one of our lucky listeners, if you didn't catch the last podcast and you're listening now, I would recommend you kind of brush up on what we shared last week as far as kind of some context around automatic transmissions. Pretty much today, it is within reason. I want to talk about what's going on in the world and how both the JT transmission automatic transmission can be my favorite transmission and also be hot garbage in the process. So
I think that's great. And the fact that just ironically, the conversation of transmissions was here with a customer this morning.
yes,
I mean, just the timing was impeccable.
yes, it was interestingly serendipitous and for a couple of reasons there. So any brush up on what we basically, it's important to note that a transmission is within reason a fluid pump, a hydraulic pump.
Yep.
And so that was kind of the big takeaway. It's been reasonably since the late 60s that we've had good automatic transmissions.
Yep.
Basically, our automatic transmission technology, it was pretty naive or maybe rudimentary. That's the word I'm looking for. Rudimentary in the early years of its utilization in the automotive industry. And so manual slush boxes were still king. And I still I remember reading about the upgrades you could do to the manual transmissions and the value of the intimacy as you as a driver and the power transfer and whatnot. And then somewhere in the 90s and early 2000s, despite the fact that in the Jeep industry, automatic transmissions were trash, the auto industry as a whole, automatic transmissions started to kind of usurp manuals.
Yes.
And really, old, adage to the old guys out there who love their manual transmissions, who are like, I'd rather know exactly which gear I'm in and pick it and force the vehicle into it. I get that. I'm in a couple big heavy truck groups who are constantly swapping out our 5 and 6 speeds for 9, 10, and 13 speeds, which
Yep.
I am fascinated by. You
Yes.
know,
And that's really
But-
the biggest thing. You need the specific gear ratio for that specific instance.
yes,
And that's really why you see, now we're into 8-speed automatics, is because they're searching to have that motor be in that nice power band uniformly as much as possible, because that's where you get the best mileage, have the best performance.
but realistically, our transmissions were automatic transmissions of yesteryear were a similar size as our 8 speeds, and
Mhm.
in there we only had about 3 speeds available
we
to
only
us.
had 3 speeds.
Right,
and-
up until very recently.
yes.
Has
especially in
that
Jeep
been the
world.
case, especially in the Jeep world? And I, for one, have this this story, and you and I were winter wheeling
Mhm.
many moons ago, and I was on a switchback of kind of a mountainside in Pennsylvania,
Yep.
and the hillside had iced over, and I was actually on a steep descent, but my Jeep had actually slid forward enough that as I was cutting, the Jeep kind of kept going straight, and I actually dropped part of my passenger side front tire over the embankment to the opposite side. So it becomes very harrowing, very uncomfortable.
The whole wheeling trip was uncomfortable.
Yeah. Ice and hillsides don't mix.
Not a good mix.
And in that moment, I had a manual transmission, and I did not have a throttle, like a finger throttle,
Thumb throttle.
thumb throttle available to me, and so I was trying to, 2-foot it across 3 pedals.
Yeah.
And if I would have had an automatic change to reverse, right? To get enough juice to reverse. If I would have had an automatic transmission, I just simply would have, kind of eased out of that scenario
100%.
and been on with life. And that's a situation to talk about what you were just saying with our manual trucks, our manual transmissions in our big trucks, a very specific technology for a very specific process
Yep.
at a very specific moment. And if all of those things align, then a manual transmission is actually very good, because oftentimes the argument with automatics is I want to be able to hold it in gear
Right.
to do this hill climb. I
Right.
want to be able to hold it in gear to launch, whatever it might be.
Right.
Um,
They're not really the best for that. It's best to let them kind of decide where and how they want to do that. That is what they're designed to do.
the automatic
With
transmissions.
an automatic, yes.
Correct. And so
Where a
if
stick, you can take off in second gear or third gear if necessary, if you need to keep wheel spin down or for whatever reason. And that is best. That's why the big trucks like that. If you got a really heavy load and you have 13 speeds to choose from, you're going to get that load moving and slow it down with one of those gears. And then
Yes.
you just have to yourself be a good driver and know, okay, I need to be in under this and
Yep.
over that. And it gets complicated for our Joe average, but I understand why.
and I think that's where the automatic transmission benefited Joe Average.
Yes.
Ultimately, probably the people who are not listening to our podcast benefited the most from automatic transmissions initially.
And we may not like it, but automatics really do make wheeling easier for the novice.
And I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm glad you said something, because I was going to bring something up in my feels, and I try not to be an old curmudgeon with decades of experience in the industry.
Before you're an old curmudgeon, I'm going to go to the comments and say good morning, Darla. And Joe was asking, what about oil leaks?
Joe's Jeep doesn't want to leave. That's the problem. Yeah, his Jeep doesn't want to leave.
Okay, now
So-
you can be an old curmudgeon. Now that I got you worked up over
all
that.
worked up over that. He's just gonna join my terrible trio out there and these other Jeeps. Whatever.
Yeah.
So, whoa, Jeffrey, you're yawning on air.
Yep.
More coffee.
Whoa, Jeffrey, I'm sorry.
not enough
Automatic
coffee.
transmissions were not enough for you, apparently. Snooze fest. So,
It's all those Z's that Darla posted in the
right,
comments.
you were just working
see
out
her yawn from here.
her yawn from here. It triggered Jeffrey's stimuli to yawn on air.
Yep.
You're the worst.
Well, how about we talk about why an 8-speed? Why are we going that direction with our current Jeeps before we get into trashing the 8-speed?
I think that's a good plan. I was just getting to my old curmudgeonness, and I'll share
That's
my
fine.
piece. It was the fact that I saw some novice enthusiasts
Mm-hmm.
who were getting some airtime, which is fine, flogging on their newer Jeeps
Mm-hmm.
in a way that they didn't know what they're doing. The
Yeah.
Jeep is so capable
Yes.
that is allowing them to put themselves in the Jeep in positions that they
are
should not
capable.
they are
of.
not capable of.
Yes.
And they were getting a bunch of airtime and in a sense positive reinforcement by the nature of social media, by the places their JL, JT, whatever is taking them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching him just the suspension's coming up off the ground and he's just throttling, just flogging through this trail system. And I'm thinking to myself,
ramrodding.
just the vehicle doesn't last that way.
No.
It's the fact that the transmission is so capable and it picks everything. It's the fact that the independent braking is so capable. And the issue is that as a curmudgeon, I'm going, you're not picking good lines. You're not being,
Right.
safe. You're not being conscientious to the trails, any of these things. But you're certainly getting the likes because you're just flogging this new
Well,
body.
Everybody
Jeep.
likes to see carnage.
Yeah. And maybe that's what it is. But
Yeah.
the auto transmissions make us such more capable drivers than we realistically
Well,
are.
that's why we say all the time the current Jeep is the most capable Jeep. We may not like to hear that, but that is very much true. And you can take a bone stock, Gladiator JT and go up trails that you took your 3.5 inches on 37s JK up, and the Gladiator didn't have an ounce of problem.
Sure.
It kind of makes you step back and go, huh.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
haven't done anything to the truck, and it went right up. I'm 90% of the hills that I went up with the other ones that I enjoyed, and
Sure.
I also still enjoyed them with the truck. So it was really put into perspective where I would have never been able to take the JK stock up that track.
Well, between the transmission, like you said, the independent braking, how many times have we wheeled where you're like, no, you've got to have limited slip in the rear diff?
yeah,
I don't have limited slip.
right.
It just
The way
does.
the computer makes it happen.
Yeah, the computer, the transmission, all of it just works together so well.
Yes, seamlessly. Yeah, 100%. And that's why I wanted to kind of bring up the good parts about the 8-speed, because they actually have an underdrive and 2 overdrives, which helps with all that capability. Gives you 2 options going down the freeway, because I've heard all the time, well, I'm not in 8th gear. Well, 7th is an overdrive. So if the Jeep deems a loss of momentum or a loss of power in 8, it's not going to go into 8.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a reason for that. Now, obviously, re-gearing it and all that kind of stuff can help put you back in that spot where you should be. But Jeep kind of saw like, hey, the bell curve of people put a big tire on this Jeep, and then they don't re-gear, or they don't know they need to re-gear. So we're going to make it as good as it can be till they come to a shop like us that can then restore some of those
That natural power band, right? The
But-
engineered power band. And
Where if you go back in the day and you get a 3-speed TJ and you go down the freeway on not even that big of a tire, the Jeep just literally runs out of breath.
yes.
Yeah.
And your JT and JL will be less likely to do that.
Yeah, which was fine for me and my wife, hammered down to the Carolinas in a
Mm-hmm.
4-cylinder automatic YJ with my foot to the floor
Right.
and that little 2.5, singing as high as possible, running through the mountains of Virginia. And that's character building.
Yes.
But realistically, most people are not into self-deprecation
no.
like I am.
Nope, they like their
And
creature comforts.
They like their creature comforts, and they don't want to be tacked out on the little 4-cylinder, humming down the
Well,
mountains.
I remember my first driver was a 4-cylinder 5-speed S10, and to try to go up the Gulf Hill, you had to drop it a couple gears
Couple
to have
gears.
enough purrs to go up that hill.
Yep.
And that was just bare pavement, nothing fancy. And that's 100% what we're kind of talking about, and where now we have more horsepower than we've ever had.
Yep.
And now we have more gears than we've ever had before. And they can purposely pick what goes where, how, and why. And
Isn't that funny to think about how we do actually have more horsepower than ever before? Because I remember being a kid and you needed to build out your V8 to have all of this
200 horsepower. Woo!
200 horsepower, and everybody in the auto industry was so angry at the auto manufacturers because
Yeah.
they're like, well, they're killing the horsepowers on that vehicle, and now I got to strip all this stuff off, and I got to
Yeah.
add this cam and blah blah blah. And now we're living in an age, whether our listeners understand this or not, we're living in an age where the auto manufacturers are like, oh, you want 300 horsepower? Sneeze, here it is.
Yes.
And it's like,
you can get 17.5 miles a gallon while
Yeah.
doing that.
yeah,
Now, obviously, anybody can screw that up and kind of threw that off, but that is very much a reality. I mean, my truck is getting 17.5 consistently. It has way more horsepower than anything I've ever had before.
sure.
That's why they're so popular.
It is. And as we mentioned last week, we had there goes Jeffrey again.
Yep.
He's yawning.
So
Automatic transmission.
Joe is saying greetings from Blanding, Utah.
Good morning, Joe. I'm calling you out every single time you yawn on air or for our
That's
podcast.
why I didn't want a
listeners.
donut. You'd be asleep.
I was gonna say you need some
Become a
sugar.
toast.
Maybe I do need a
I
donut.
was gonna say, do you need something over here?
I don't know. I don't know.
Goodness, Jeffrey.
It was a long weekend, I gotta say.
So, as far as last week, we were talking about CVT transmissions, constant velocity transmission, which is basically a series of cones and bands.
Yep.
That is not the 8-speed, right?
No.
8-speed is in our Wranglers and our JTs, our
It's a
Wranglers and the Gladiators.
Standard normal S transmission that has bands and clutches to make it work.
Correct. Drums and bands and clutches versus the kind
Chain
of cone and
cone.
chain design of the
Yeah.
CVTs. So now we have 8 speeds in this in our Jeeps. They have an underdrive, which gives us this kind of initial low out of the
Yeah,
gate
for
power transfer.
that's our granny first for those old school guys.
Right. And then 7 and 8 are overdrive. So when you're cruising the nice flat land,
Yep.
you're at the most efficient power transfer
As possible.
as possible.
Yep.
So now, what's the problem with them?
Well, just like
Which part?
any time that we
Sorry, we were boring you to death, Jeffrey. Now he's ready to go.
Now he's on fire.
He said, "I wasn't here for how good these transmissions are. I want to know how crappy they are."
well,
is what he said.
anytime you come out with something
maybe.
new, you are going to have some teething problems and some things that you thought was right and good. And only thing you need to have any proof of this is ever try to build a project yourself. And then afterwards, everybody goes, well, now if you're done it, what would you do differently next time? You always have a list.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter if you're an engineer at, Stellantis, or if you're building a shed in your backyard, or you're trying to build a hot rod in your shop. It's the same thing. And they simply cannot see all the problems or little things all at once. So you're going to have what in the transmission world is called updates. So as things are processed through and like, okay, well, we had a problem with this. Let's look at it from a different direction. Let's look at it from a different angle. And maybe we actually need to make this hole slightly bigger, or we need to change the thickness of this washer, or we're talking that kind of small minutia of stuff. That is what updates are. And every transmission that you've ever had in your vehicle, the entire time you've been driving, has had updates. And that's why when they're rebuilt, they say, well, we've done all the updates and we've done all the kits. That's what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And simply it is that the fact that we have a new transmission, they're working through that process right now. Now, the cool thing about that is back in, 1990, when you wanted to put your updates in, you pulled the transmission out of the truck or the Jeep and you tore it apart in a million pieces, and you bought the kit and you went through and you modified it yourself as a technician, and you put it all back together, and then you put it back in the vehicle, and then you tested it out. Now we can hook it up to a computer
Mm-hmm.
and we can tell it to do something different in its programming. And I hear all the time, I watched a couple of videos over the weekend where people are referencing wiring is so complicated and the computers make it so hard, but they kind of make it easy at the same time. And if you're just willing to kind of pull your head out of the sand a little bit and realize why they do what they do. Example is I was doing some research on swapping an 8-speed into a JK. and that is something I didn't know a lot about. All you have to do is give the 8-speed access to the data line and the JK, and it pretty much operates.
Yep. There's actually plug and play kits.
Other than that, you have a couple powers and a couple grounds, and you hook it up to the shifter, and it pretty much does its thing as is. That's because the JK is as electronic as it is. If you go back into a TJ, you're not going to have that communication bus like that. There is one for the people that are going to yell at me, but it's nowhere near the level.
Right. It's not the advanced nature. I mean, obviously we have that Grand Cherokee that I've been working through, and I'm a purveyor of the TJ
Yes.
LJ era. And
it's where they got their start for that.
100%. But where we're at with the JKs and now the JLJT with the ribbon band communication, we're in a whole different ball game.
And something else I found really interesting is there actually is a module in most swap kits that looks like a computer to the untrained eye that actually is just to slow down the communication from the 8-speed to JK level.
Huh.
So it's because each time we upgrade to a new wiring and a new computer, that communication speed increases. So the way they explained it is you have thousands of communication
Like
or
data points
or data
coming
points
through.
or 100, and the JK is 100. So if the 8-speed was just to yell at the JK without the box, the JK wouldn't be able to understand it because it would go back.
It needs to
faster
be
and faster.
funneled.
So it has to slow it down. It's literally just slowing down the data stream coming from the 8-speed so they can translate that in. And once that happens, the JK is there for it and it makes it work.
So real
That's
fast
awesome.
in the comments, Amanda saying, "Morning, guys."
Good morning.
And then Roy's asking, "Is that swap mostly for 12 up JKs?"
It is.
It is for mostly for 3.6s, but with that said, if you go to put a Hemi in your
7 to
7
11.
through 11, you can totally put an 8-speed behind that, and there is ways to making that work with that wiring harness.
And that was a brief part of this morning's conversation, is that this particular 8-speed is the same 8-speed that is being utilized in the factory 392 Jeeps. But ultimately, if you are doing the appropriate 6.4 392 Hemi, this 8-speed bolts right up to the backside of it. This is a bolt-up conversion. So you can, the bell housing pattern is going to be the same with the 2.0s, the EcoDiesels. Well, no, excuse me, I take that back. I'm not sure about the EcoDiesels, but the 2.0s, the 3.6s, and the 392s all share the exact same bell housing bolt pattern. My assumption is the EcoDiesel shares it as well, but I don't know that one factually.
Right.
So don't quote me on that necessarily. But the rest of them share the bell housing pattern, and that 8-speed transmission can, within reason, interchange with all those different engine platforms. The question this morning was a customer was looking at some other Jeep builders, and these Jeep builders have marketed themselves as having a magic transmission that goes in behind the Hemi. And that's just factually not correct. There is, it's one of the things we're going to be doing with our Tons and Turbos Jeep, is when we switch out the engine transmission for that particular customer, we will be doing the upgraded solenoid and shift pack for that Jeep. So
Upgrades.
Exactly what you're talking about, because while the 8-speed, and so ultimately that automatic transmission can be built with the best available robust products at the
that
time.
moment, yeah.
It is, as engineers redesign, redevelop, they go, hey, you know what? We should actually make this a little bit bigger. This
Right.
push rod, this piston.
And again, if you
know.
need another example for that, and a lot of us have owned Jeeps for a long time. Go look at your climate controls in TJ land.
Sure.
They changed almost every year until they finally got a good 4 or 5 years under their belt, and then they finally found something that kind of worked and stuck with it.
For their HVAC controls
Yes.
at the center console there.
Doesn't matter if it's a transmission or that. They continually go, that wasn't a good idea. And then the second idea probably wasn't a good idea.
Well, and additionally, as automatic transmissions have increased, we recognize that The automatic transmissions, I bring up, I suppose, my LJ and my 1-ton Cummins that I have. They're of the same era.
Right.
The transmissions actually are very similar to each other. But they're going to be dissimilar because the components within the Cummins Ram truck transmission are simply going to be more robust than in the LJ because of the power to weight
Yeah.
ratio and the anticipated use of the vehicle.
And they actually kept the older, more archaic design on the diesel longer because it's more of a UGG simpler.
Yeah, just a big
version.
sledgehammer version.
Yeah.
And so therefore the components that you put in the transmission that's going to go behind a Hemi are not they're worthless in a transmission that goes behind the the 6-cylinder, the 204 cylinder. And so they just wouldn't do that from the factory as a cost savings piece.
Right.
So here's the problem, Jeffrey. I know you're biting at the bit. You were all excited to be angry about your transmission.
No. First, I want to ask, how do we service the 8-speed transmissions?
Oh, you don't. You throw them away. That's the easy. That's the short and the long of
And
it. but
that's exactly why I wanted to bring that up.
yeah,
Because
we
we have serviced them here.
have.
Yes.
Um,
Biggest challenge is the first ones you can actually change the filter, but for those that don't know, they are bolted or are attached to the pan itself. Where we used the old school transmissions, you'd pull the pan down and the filter would be hanging there, ready to fall out or attached by some simple bolt or something like that. It is reversed. Now it is as part of the pan. Again, that is just a quick thing on the line. They can slap that pan up there, the filter is installed, and it's right.
Yep.
As they progress, they're looking at budget savings, and there is some pans now where that filter is isn't molded in, but it's like heat set into the pan. So at that point, to change the filter, you're changing the pan.
Mm-hmm.
What about changing the oil or checking the oil?
It is not something that you can just naturally do in your driveway as much anymore.
I'm going to take a quick moment. If you have one of the older Chrysler transmissions, you check that in neutral.
Yep.
Yeah.
Chalk the vehicle off safely. Has to
On a
be at
level
operating
surface.
temperature
On a level surface too.
on a level surface. Chalk it off, level surface, set your parking brake, and you check the automatic transmission in neutral. That's a big misnomer in our industry.
Let me just take 2 seconds and tell you why that is. The reason why you check most old school Mopar transmissions in neutral is because in park, the pump does not pump.
Yep.
It is not circulating fluid through the transmission. Therefore, your transmission pan will be higher level than it should be. Once you put it in neutral, now it's activating those circuits. Those rivers I was talking about
Yes.
are all flowing.
Rivers are flowing. This is a good
So-
old folk song. Good
So
old
now
country
it's
song.
lowered the pan level, and now you have an accurate level for operation. That is
Okay.
why.
So
It's
if we're not doing that with our older transmissions,
You're
and
going to get in a proper reading. You're going to think it's more full than it is.
yes, now we move into our 8-speeds because you can still check a JK, right?
Yes.
Now we're into our 8-speeds, our JLs and our JTs. They are lubed for life as far as
It's the way
Chrysler
that
is concerned.
Chrysler would like it to be.
Right. And I actually just saw a guy, internet personality online. He's more in the big truck world, get real angry about the automatic transmissions in the semis.
Mm-hmm.
And because they too have just recently gone to lube for life.
Yes.
And ultimately, he's going, oh, this shit. And they also want it to be throwaway, right?
Yeah.
So going, hey, you can't rebuild this.
And I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off real quick. Ford did this in 2005.
Yep.
So this is not new.
Mm-hmm.
We've had plenty of warning that this is the way it was going. It just happened in 18 for us, so almost a solid 10 years later, and everybody is shocked and amazed. But this is not new. The Dipsticks went away and Explorers in 05.
So what does the average Jeep owner do then?
I mean, and the short and long of it is it's a very mechanical thing. So the best thing you should do is learn about it if you're going to do it on your own, or if in lieu of that, find a good shop like us to take care of it. Someone that has experience in that, knows what they're doing, is going to have those parts in stock, because you're going to have the normal cussing at engineers, honestly, for no reason, because if you were educated on it, you would know what you should expect of how to fill it, how to drain it, the fact the filter don't come out of the pan. But we're going to be hearing that for the next 10 years of like, I took my pan off and the filter was molded as part of it. Yep, it is.
The thing is, right now there's a lot of complaints. Jeffrey's Jeep doesn't want to shift.
It forgets to shift sometimes, is what it comes down to. It'll rev up real high before it finally will shift, and it's not constant. I fully believe at this point that it is a computer issue.
Yeah, I bet you. yours is a
Because
flash.
switching programmers made a difference.
Yep.
It made a significant difference. So I believe there is it's due for a flash, as you just said.
Yep. Which is an update.
And my wife's mall crawler stutter shifts somewhere around.
Which you have an 18.
Yep.
And Jeff's has a 21. And so as things progress, you're going to, that 18 is going to need more updates and flashes than, say, Jeff's 21 should in a perfect world.
And it's one of the things that kind of annoys me because it does stutter as if it is missing a gear, or in your traditional sense that it's actually slipping gears. Now, her Jeep as an 18, we bought it a little higher in the miles, and then my wife never shut it off in the last few years of owning it. So it's pushing about 110,000, maybe a little more, a little less. And so now we're at this point, and the conversation is, what do you do about these transmissions that we have? Because in the grand scheme, the 8-speed is an incredibly robust, strong transmission.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the recommendations we have is you never do a flush of a transmission. That was a very popular service that garages offered in the 90s for sure. So they offered a transmission flush.
Let's take 2 seconds to explain what a flush is. Basically, flush is a dialysis machine for your transmission. It is taking 100% of the fluid out of the transmission and putting 100% new in. You're hooking up to a machine that is changing the flow, so it's actually going out of the transmission through the machine and then back to the transmission, just like a dialysis would be for a human. And then it can then at some point put back in new fluid as the old fluid is coming out. And the good thing about that, if you do it early, is you're getting 100% of those old dirt particles out. The downfall is that when you wait too long and now you have so much dirt built up, you have the analogy I always use, and people seem to like it, is we have a house that's paintable. And if you paint your house routinely and you keep on top of it, you have a good experience. If you do what me or anybody else does that has a busy life, you forget about it and the paint starts to peel, or it starts to pick up off the boards. Well, now you have a couple choices. You can go about it slow and steady and keep cleaning it up as you go, or you can take a pressure washer and hit the side of your house. What's the mess look like afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
Hit it with a pressure washer, you're going to have paint chips everywhere. The yard's going to be covered, the dog, the car, the windows,
the kids as they walk by.
kids
I feel like you have experience with this.
Right.
You're going to have angry situation and things are going to be hard.
Right.
It's the same adage with doing a flush on a high mileage transmission. Now all that dirt is everywhere, and now you've taken a pressure washer and you've blasted it all through. Now we plug filters. Now we have problems. So
valve bodies get filled
up. And we're talking very small, minute valves and stuff that move in there. So it doesn't take a lot for that stuff to get locked up and problems. And people will say, well, it was okay for a long time. Well, It's the same way as you can have build up in your heart valves, and you'd be operating fine, and then suddenly you're not.
Yes.
It's the same idea. So what I like to do in those really high mileage, starting to be a little bit of a crabby transmission, is you do a slow service. You come in a couple different times and you slowly exchange the fluid out, so it's not a big shock. You're slowly cleaning up that mess.
Mm-hmm.
And that is your best recipe for success. But you still have that opportunity for that valve to lock up problem happen. and you always have to be warned ahead of time that that is a realization.
Correct.
I mean, as a consumer in the '90s, very distinctly remember any shop was like, "Oh yeah, you transmission flush, transmission flush."
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Then all of a sudden they switch to, well, we will only do it if it's under 100,000
Yes.
miles
Yes.
because of liability
Well,
reasons.
you know
Yeah.
what happened? They got tired of having to call the customer like, "Hey, we did your tranny flush, and now the Jeep won't back out of the
Can you
garage."
imagine how
Right.
many
Oh, yeah,
vehicles were, rendered, a
Happened a lot.
void transmission at that point in time? Because you're right. I mean, it was an oil change, was $9.95 or $19.95. Transmission flush was $49.95.
Yeah, it
or
was
whatever.
cheap. It was
Yeah.
real
And-
cheap.
And then you were constantly putting new transmissions, and that
Yeah.
vehicle was stuck over there because they went to shift.
Now it
and
suddenly doesn't have reverse.
it doesn't
or
have
first gear
reverse.
is
The first gear's gone.
Yep.
Absolutely. God, that was such a funny time. And we've just learned since then. But unfortunately, by the time that information trickles down to the average consumer, it's so foreign
Yes.
that, that it takes a while. I always feel like we are operating within a world as average consumers. We're resonating from 20 years ago technology.
Yes.
And so there are still people, not many, but who are asking for transmission flushes. Oh, hey, my transmission started to feel like it's slipping gears. Should I
Yeah.
flush it now?
Too late.
No, man, you should have flushed it around 30,000 miles, and then
Yeah.
we could keep on
How
going.
I used to explain stuff when I worked at the tranny shop every day. I was like, okay, let's switch this around. If your motor was knocking, would you do an oil change to fix it? And they always look at you like, well, of course not. That's crazy. Well, it's the same way when you ask me if the tranny flush or fluid change is going to fix your slipping transmission. Nope.
Correct.
not
You mean
gonna
I'm
do
not
that.
supposed to just throw some Marvel's Mystery Oil in there, get rid of
No.
that knock?
No.
Oh. Oh, that
So-
was another thing that was a '90s thing.
Oh well, I think it predates the 90s.
Yeah,
But
probably.
I understand. Everything can be fixed with Seafoam and Lucas.
Oh,
That's just-
absolutely.
That's just the
Absolutely.
reality of it. I think to kind of sum this up, if you will, embrace the automatic transmissions. They're here to stay. They make us more qualified wheelers, whether we like it or not. Those of us old curmudgeons who still like to row gears, we appreciate that Chrysler still gives us that
Option.
facade, that option.
Yeah.
Otherwise, those of us who are running around automatic transmissions, you're just kind of, transmission by wire at this point. Though they gave us a shifter, doesn't really count, and that's just kind of a fluid pump in there for you to take the power from the engine, and put it to the ground for
axles.
you. Yep. The 8 speeds are here to stay. For the most part, great, robust transmission utilized across multiple engine platforms within our Wranglers and our Gladiators.
And last time we were talking about the picture, we talked about the torque
The
converter.
cutaway.
We didn't bring up the cutaway of the transmission. We previewed it quickly,
Okay.
so we should
Take a gander at that
take a
again.
gander at that again.
And if you are, I'll just kind of continue my vamp real quick. If you are a JK owner who's invested heavily in your JK and it is cooperating, unlike several of the ones that I have here on property at this time, if you've invested heavily and you want to continue going, an 8-speed transmission might be a pretty cool swap for you. I know I'm excited by that possibility. We did bring up a cutaway of the automatic transmission, or a automatic transmission, kind of showing kind of the inputs, the outputs,
I think
shift selector, solenoids.
my favorite part of it is the planetary gears and just how intricate that system is.
Yes. They have little needle bearings in there that are lubricated, which is also, why and fluid and that stuff is so important.
And my thing is, folks, if you're interested in remanufactured transmissions, or you might need to pursue that as an option for your vehicle, understand, transmissions do not have magic in them, but they are a detail-oriented process. You really want that transmission to have been done within a clean and appropriate environment with a qualified individual performing the service. I know factually, I have bought some Jeeps that were the transmission had been recently rebuilt by the owner or a friend
Yeah.
of the owner or whatever. No documents, no paperwork accompanied it. If you're ever looking at a vehicle that's used and they're claiming a level of rebuilt or remanufacturing, you always want to get that documentation to ensure that it was done appropriately
Properly.
and properly.
Yeah.
Because if you look inside that transmission in the cutaway, I'm sorry, our listeners who can't see that, there's a lot going on in there. It's not impossible, but it's also not the same as hooking it up to a dialysis transmission machine, and pumping fluid from one port to another. So understand there is a lot going on, and arguably embrace the autos. They are very good quality. They are very robust, and can make for a very enjoyable on and off-road experience.
And they also, for the 8-speeds, take a very specific fluid only, too.
Yes.
We're not dealing with your standard ATF,
No.
box store variety anymore. So if you have questions on this, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to walk you through the process. Again, the 8-speed swap for our 3.6 JK owners. If you are a 3.8 JK owner, unfortunately, that does not bolt up the same, so that would be the challenge. But when you're ready to drop that Hemi into your sick 2009, 2010, 7 to 11 JK, we're here to bolt it to an 8-speed and make it hum down the road. So,
100%.
anything else for the good of the order?
I think that's about
We've
it.
got a ton of Jeeps to work on. We had a blast with you guys. We're going to be doing it again next Monday at 10:19 a.m. Until then, Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.